I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Abstract Essay. Abstract Essay is created to empower artists all over the world like us. And today, I want to introduce to you my new co-host, Mr. Sal Lucendia. So, Mr. Sal, can you please introduce more about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. I'm happy to be here as your co-host. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, streaming in, whatever they do nowadays.
Yes.
So I'm a painter. I am a professor of design, and I am an author. And I'm a lover of the world. I love,
Okay.
I'm inspired by things big and small. How about that?
Definitely. So, Mr. Sal, thank you so much for being part of Approx
Please, please.
Thank you so much. And I just want to plug in my Book 101 review. Please do listen to my Book 101 review on its fifth season already, people. My feature author of the month is Miss Kat Rambo, award winning author, and of course, sooner or later become best-selling author too. And Mr. Sal, can you want to promote your book, Manhattan something?
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Manhattan: The Rising War. It's out now. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all the mom and pops, right? Walmart.com. But also at Changing Hands Bookstore in Tempe, Arizona, where I'm currently sitting as we speak in the desert in 80 degrees Fahrenheit uh,
Yes.
in the winter. But yeah, thanks for the shout out, Daniel. And your
Yes.
book as well, right? You have a series.
Yes. I have a series of abstract essay. Please do support it where books are sold from, I
Yes.
think also, yes, everywhere. So, Mr. Sal, what will be the title of your painting that we gonna scrutinize?
Yes, so the scrutiny continues. So I've got three pieces today. It's part of a
Yes.
trilogy. And this is the first that you're looking at on the screen. It's called Manuscape. It's from 2023. All three of them actually are from the same year. I picked these because I wanted to express the importance of conceptual design when you're creating paintings. For me, it's a tool that works quite often to have sort of an idea in mind and to draw it out, to pre-visualize it, if you will, right? So Daniel, I don't know how you are when you work, but I need to sort of sketch it and be able to see it on paper before I realize it, on a canvas. And so,
So you are an architect.
yeah, I have a
You
background in architecture, and now I teach interior design and interior architecture. So that was actually part of my upbringing, my development as an architectural designer was to constantly draw, to constantly sort of revise and conceptualize.
So, Mr. Sal, what message or emotion did you convey when you are painting this?
Well, this one was all about grandeur. It was about scale, but it was also about escape. I don't know. Maybe I was in just a frame of mind of wanting to break free. But each one of these paintings that we'll see deals with escape in some way, right? Sort of, escape in a way that could involve traveling and discovery, right? Or escaping from something, perhaps. But again, each of these is elevated in scale, right? So in
Yes.
this one, this first one, you see this person down here, and actually, well, I could zoom in, but this person is an ex-con, sort of an escaped convict, right? He's got the
Yes.
orange jumpsuit. We don't know really, what his history is, right? But he's sort of found himself stumbled upon this landscape of what I call manuscapes. So these manuscapes, it's a combination of words, right? It's a combination of monumental and landscape. but also escape, right? You could sort of see all three of those words in this title. So I made three of these. There's Manuscape, shown here. There's Manuscape Moon, which is set on a whole different, planetary atmosphere. Um, and then there's Manuscape Mystique, which is
Wow.
inspired by yet another sort of environment totally. But each one, again, sort of plays with scale, human scale in some capacity, right? And sort of juxtaposes those human characters against these giant outcroppings, these manuscapes, right? So when taken together, I'm going to zoom in here. This is kind of what you have, right? The trilogy. But
Trilogy painting.
yeah, and again, these are studies of concept as much as they are in execution for me, right? So I needed to sort of nail down the ideas first through sketches, right? So here's one. This is a mixed media sketch on Bristol board. I love Bristol board because it's a sturdier type of paper, right? But just to sort of get the idea out there, right? I needed these figures, these manuscapes to be anthropomorphic, right? So I'm all about, as we sort of mentioned last week, I'm all about anthropomorphic characterization. So buildings, objects that have sort of human attributes, human qualities about them. So these are outcroppings, these are rocks, but they're also very humanoid in shape, right? So
Yes.
they could be living, right? So here's a detail from the first manuscape, and you could kind of see, the direct translation from the sketch to the final image, right? And
Yeah.
I was inspired by in Arizona, there's this famous park called Papago Park, and it has famous outcroppings. One of them is called the Hole in the Rock, and it looks a lot like this one here. Here, let me zoom in. It looks kind of like this rock that you see on the left, but
Yes.
the color is similar. It's kind of like a red sediment, right? Red clay. The geology is similar to what you're seeing here, except obviously, I'm taking this in a much more surreal direction, surrealist. Um,
So, Mr. Saul, do you think this kind of painting is realistic, abstract, or a mix of both?
Yeah, it is a mix. It's obviously this sort of surrealist, fantastical setting, but each of these objects drop a shadow, right? They cast shadows, so the laws of physics and gravity still apply, right? The use of lighting technique, it's meant to be as realistic as I could make it, right? Even like looking at this part here, I put a lot of time, I remember, in this area, right? Like giving
Yes.
each sort of rock a specific personality almost, right? And it sort of adds up to create what I think is actually, even within this fantastical setting, sort of a natural, very, very natural and understandable design.
Yes. Is there
If
a
that
cultural or symbolic elements for this trilogy?
Yeah, there is a lot of symbolism in each, right? I love to I laid in my paintings in symbolism all the time. So this second one, Manuscape Moon, it's set it's set on some sort of planetary prison. And then you have these two, let me see, I have close-ups here. You have these two lovers. Uh, Here they are,
Yes.
right? And here's the sketch for them. Um, and they're engaged in forbidden romance, right? So on this planet or this moon, wherever they are, they're not allowed to fall in love, right? This is kind of a take on the movie THX 1138 by George Lucas.
Yes.
So these prisoners, they've escaped from their cells, right? And now they're being pursued by these very stormtrooper-like uh, robots, right? So here they are, and of course, the symbol here is this flag, which has a heart with an X in it, essentially, right? So here it is here, right? So love is forbidden on this planet, on Manuscape Moon. So that one, yeah, is all about escape, but also, I guess, forbidden love. And then, yeah, I mean, again, in each one, I sprinkle them with symbolism. There's overt symbolism in each, um, and there's very sort of subtle symbolism.
So, Mr. Sal, how did you arrange the elements within this trilogy?
Yeah, sort of similar to that last set of paintings we've we showed last week. Background to
Yes.
foreground, right? So I always work with the background elements first. So here you have the sky. That was the first thing I painted for continuity purposes. And then, in this case, I start way back here with these monunscapes that are far off into the distance. There's atmospheric haze present. These rocks were inspired by actually Phuket, um, sort of the mushroom rock outcroppings that you see there. There's a
Yes.
famous James Bond movie.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
yeah, the man with the golden gun, where they filmed it here, right? And so I looked at those rock outcroppings and wanted to sort of emulate that. But yeah, again, I work from background layer to foreground. So the last thing I painted, or one of the last things, was probably the group of people here and this shark, right? And maybe this rock here in the foreground and this boat.
Mm, yes. Definitely. So, how did you
Mhm.
balance the light and shadow for this trilogy?
Um, it
Just
was
like
tricky.
this.
Yeah, like looking
Yes.
at this one, um, I had to look at a lot of pictures of the moon landing and study in this case what is the role of light on the moon. Um, so here you have this sort of what I realized on the moon. It's like a giant LED light hitting the surface. It's a very kind of different type of lighting effect than I think what we're used to on Earth here. Here on Earth where we still
Yes.
are. um,
Yes.
Whereas in this case, it's a different kind of effect altogether, right? There's much more sort of variation in the colors, in the color of the stone. So you could kind of see that here. And then, just light and shadow in general. I mean, this is an extreme close-up, but I tried to give every rock, every pebble, some sort of shadow, right? Just to ground it in reality.
Yes. So, what techniques did you use to guide viewers' eye across the paintings for this
Mm.
trilogy?
Yeah, I try to make my paintings dance, I guess, for the viewer, right? I love the viewer
Yes.
to be able to focus on certain elements and sort of go on a visual journey. Um, so in this case, I think the bright red, I would say the use of color or lack of color is an
Mm,
important agent in sort of driving the narrative and driving where you look, right? Where you look at the painting at a particular moment. So in this case, this is very prominent, right? The people in their red outfits, this sort of pink neon light, and the flag above. But also, it's sort of bookended visually by this manuscape, right? Which is sort of, it's not red, obviously, but it's bright. It's commanding attention in its own way. So you're sort of bouncing back and forth.
Oh,
visually,
yes.
right?
So did you use warm or cool tones for these trilogies?
Well, this one, the second one, Manuscape Moon, is, I would say, achromatic, right? So it's only using neutral colors, really, except for the red elements, but it's predominantly black, white, and gray. Um, I cheated a little and gave the black an underbelly of dark blue, just to sort of give it a richer sort of feel at the end. But this one feels so different in terms of warm and cool. I would say this one, the second one's mostly a cool color palette. Um, this one is also quite cool, right? The use of
Yes.
blues, greens, aquas predominantly, whereas the first one, um, it's mostly a warm color palette, right? If you look at these
Yes.
outcroppings here, it's that famous Arizona. Again, if you go to Papago Park in Phoenix, Arizona, you'll recognize sort of the quality of light here, and you'll recognize the type of rock that it is.
So did you use specific textures or layering techniques for this trilogy?
Oh yeah, layering is king here, you know. I just usually I paint with a broader brush, and then make it I start to pull out the finer and finer brushes, right, till I get to like one or two hairs of brushes to do the final layers on these surfaces here. So like, in this case, um, this is not just one kind of brush stroke technique. It's several, right? I had to get the overall, um, the cover the overall shape, and then add highlights. Um, so there's a lot going on even in this little area here
Yes.
with regards to lighting and with regards to texture.
Yes, for sure. Is there specific tools or materials you need or you use to achieve this desired effect?
Yeah, I mean, having a variety of different brushes, paintbrush types and sizes, uh, is super important. So if you're gonna, again, if you start painting, or I encourage everyone listening and watching this to start a painting, right?
Yes.
What will you need to do that besides an idea? And I think we talked last time. It doesn't need to be an idea that others are gonna judge. It's just an idea for yourself, right? So don't think about good work, bad work, in between work, right? If it's honest work, then most likely it's going to be good work. But have your idea, have an easel. So I have one back here. I don't know if you could see it, but
Yes.
I've had this easel for years, actually. My art teacher, Janet Blum, in high school, gave it to me when we all graduated, and I've kept it ever since. So it tells a story to me. It's a personal uh, sort of part of the process, right? So easels, good paint brushes, different sizes, obviously a canvas or some sort of surface, is important to have. Time, I think we talked about this last week, right? Time
Yes.
is important. Having the time to set aside to dedicate yourself to a painting is very important. Um, and then what else? Music. I'm always listening to music as I paint. I know people though who listen to nothing. They're sort of in complete silence as they paint, which is their sort of strategy, their technique. But me, I gotta have loud music on. Uh, all kinds of different musical genres too.
Wow. So, Mr. Saul, what techniques did you use did you use for creating a depth and dimension for this trilogy?
Different techniques. I would say, well, I mean, they're very flat paintings, right? So there's no expressionism here. There's not a lot of texture, like thick, you know, thick paint where you could apply some sort of a gesso to paints to thicken it up. I didn't really do that, right? I kept everything pretty flat. Um, but the techniques at play are composition, obviously, trying to land on what I feel to be the most natural composition. So in this case, you have elements and objects in the far background towards the horizon line, but then you have sort of mid-level elements dominating the sort of middle part of the canvas. And then you have this piece on the right, which is like just a portion of another manuscape, but that's alluding to the fact that this object is right above our heads, right? It's right above where this camera has taken this photo, if you will, right? So there's depth. I would say that's a technique at play is the use of depth. And then what sort of atmospheric qualities need to be implemented to achieve that sense of depth. Um, yeah, so there's a few. I don't know if I hit all of them, but
I think so. So, how did you know that when your trilogy is totally finished?
when I stop, I think when I stop growing, when um, I know that I wanted to create multiple worlds, like different settings. Like this one's a desert, more arid area. This one is in space on like some sort of asteroid belt with stars. And then this one introduces sort of a tropical or aqua, it's water driven, it's water based, this environment. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, I could take these further and further, right? I could do an Arctic one, right? I could do one that's in sort of a lava setting, right? Like a hot area. Um, or I could just sort of keep it at a trilogy. And I really I think I dig the trilogy concept, right? It's short, it's sweet. It allows you to play with a multitude of different ideas, but also have a really strong beginning, middle, and ending, right? So I think having a trilogy is, there's a reason why we have so many trilogies in the arts, right? A lot of
Yes.
movies, poems, books. Trilogies seems to be something that many different cultures can relate to. And so I like continuing that tradition. In some cases, I've also done series of paintings that are more than three. I've done duos, right? I've done just uh, uh, one and two installments in a series. Um, Another series I've had over, I think, 60 installments in that same series. And the one we looked at last week, the Manhattan series, had 5 paintings in it. But yeah, again, it goes back to I think our conversation last week, knowing when to, stop,
Yes.
which I should
Yes.
probably stop because I'm babbling on and on.
No, you are just explaining what's happening to the trilogy. So, to sum up our discussion, Mr. Sal, what steps will you take to preserve and display the finished artwork?
Well, so 2 of them, I'm very fortunate and lucky to say that 2 of them have been sold, so they're out of my hands. They're in, different states. I really don't even know where they are. So that's not a good answer, is it? But well, actually, on that note, I always recommend this also to anyone who creates anything, whether it's paintings, sculptures, photos, whatever it may be. Always back up your work, right?
Yes.
So what I usually do when I'm done with a painting is I take it to get professionally scanned on a flatbed scanner or a high-res photo. So each one of these I have at least as a TIFF file, a .tiff, which is a high-res digital file of the painting, right? And so that is very important to me to have a sort of archive of work, so that when the original, if I'm, if I'm blessed that the original has sold, at least I have that high res image to reference.
Yes. So, Mr. Sal Cosenza, thank you so much for sharing your painting to the world of paintings. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
thank
And
you.
we are looking forward for more inspiring paintings that you will create for 2025. So
Yes. Oh yeah.
definitely yes,
All right.
right?
Well, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you when I see you.
More to come, people. See you soon. Great episode, Mr.
All right.
Saul.